Hello everyone, nice of you to drop by my channel, and nice of you to be watching this. It's always nice to get new viewers on my channel. I mean, I just started up doing this, and to be honest, it's been a little while since my last video. There's been a few things that's happened in my life in the last few weeks, so I haven't really been able to ride as much motorcycle as I wanted to. I just finished out a rental part in my house, so I've rented out parts of my house as a separate apartment, so there was quite a lot of stuff that had to be done by the 1st of June, and then after that I pretty much had an eye surgery. Nothing major, nothing serious, but it basically meant that my eyesight was not optimal until today. Now, I wear contacts, so basically this treatment that I did meant that I couldn't wear contacts until today. So today is my first trip out on a bike for a little over a week, I would say. And I've just been itching to get out. It's a nice day. It's about 20 degrees centigrade outside right now, so I'm heading to my regular ice cream stop. So that was the quick personal update. I don't know how much of my personal life I'm going to be talking about on this channel. So the other thing I thought I'd talk about today is this bike, this 2014 S1000 single R. I've had this bike now for a little over a year. I've done about 8,000–9,000 kilometers on it. So I'm actually starting to get a really good basis to kind of give my impressions of this bike. And first of all, I'd just like to say that I love this bike. I absolutely love it. It's great. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But no bike's perfect. All bikes are compromises, and some bikes are purpose-built. If you buy a sports bike, it's not going to be a great tourer. If you get a tourer, it's not going to be a great sports bike. And this thing is kind of a sports bike built on a naked bike built on a sports bike frame with all the sport bike bits. It's been detuned a little bit compared to the R version. Now, the main difference between this bike and the R is this thing's got 160 horsepower and the R's got 190 and change. And basically it all comes down to these little digits here. I mean, this guy runs out at 12,000 RPM, and the R has got 2,000 more. And that is pretty much where the power difference is, because I have had a look at dyno charts from a single R and a R, and basically on 11,000 RPM this bike and the R has the exact same power. This bike has also got a slightly different gearing, so first gear isn't quite as long as on a sports bike, so it's got a different gearing, and thus this bike has a top speed that's about 40 kilometers an hour lower than the R. So that was a little bit of technical stuff, but this is basically a R slightly detuned with a more upright set of bars, and that makes it a lot of fun. It makes it it's a better touring bike. It's a good hooligan bike, but I mean, there are better hooligan bikes out there. And then there's the whole track bike, sports bike part of it, which it also does very well, but you're upright, so it does it does have an effect on your riding. But all in all, I mean, this bike does everything very good. It's a very good all-round bike. And also, being naked means that there's a lot of wind, so you don't do stupid speeds. I mean, this bike has got a top speed of what, like 260 kilometers an hour or something like that. And I mean, I can't imagine riding this bike this fast, at least not for some amount of time, like you can on a sports bike where you're sort of crouched down behind a fairing. But all in all, I really like this bike. This bike has got the electronic suspension, and that is one of the few things that I don't like about this bike. Now, there's nothing wrong with the suspension in itself. It's just that I'm a little bit heavy. I'm a heavier rider, which is just a nice way of saying that I'm fat. Right, so I just had my ice cream. Back to the suspension. You can see I put the zip tie on before I went out today, and this is in hard suspension mode, and I was just riding calmly on the street. Now, the suspension on this bike is set up for a 85 kilogram rider, and I am a fair bit above that. It's a bit soft for me, so the suspension isn't quite working out for my body weight. And I'm gonna do a video series on the suspension on this bike, because I plan to respring it, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this in those videos. So back to a more general, my more general opinions on this bike is that it's a great bike. It does come with a lot of extras. This bike has got the two option packages, so I got heated grip, I got all the modes, I got dynamic pro rider modes, I've got electronic suspension, cruise control. So basically all the stock bells and whistles that comes with this bike. And the quick shifter. All in all, riding this bike, even though the suspension isn't attuned to me, it's still a very stable bike. It's really fun to ride. I'm not too much affected by the wind. It's quite flickable. So as long as you stick to road legal speeds, the stock suspension will do its job very well, regardless of your weight. This bike does have a few other quirks. I mean, one of the really bad things, it's got some really nasty vibrations. The bars will vibrate quite a lot, even stock. The stock mirrors are basically impossible to see anything behind you if you're going above 70-80 kilometers an hour. Since I got the bar end mirrors, I also have this extra little bar weight here, and I got also the weight of the mirror itself. So all the weight has been moved to the outside of the bar, or to the bar ends, and that way I've pretty much limited the vibrations to 4,000 RPMs. Anything above or below 4,000 RPMs is fine, but just at 4,000 RPM it vibrates. It's like holding an angle grinder, and it really just makes your hands go really numb if you stay at that RPM range for a while. The fun factor of riding this bike is also quite huge. It's just an endless amount of power. And even though now I'm at 4,000 RPMs, I can pretty much just twist and it'll pick up. A lot of people think this bike is pretty strong in the lower revs, and yes, it is. It's fairly strong, but once you get up to around 8,000 RPMs, that's when the fun really starts. And the first time I hit 9,000 RPMs on this bike, I almost shit myself, because it was just insane. It was almost, yeah, it was like just holding on for dear life. When you pass that 8,000-9,000 mark, you're holding on if you're not prepared, and it'll scare you. Since then I've got used to it, so it's not as extreme anymore. But if you're in second gear or even third, the front wheel can come up. Other than that, consumption wise, it's yeah, it's all right. I typically get let's see, range, trip, there we go, average 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers. That's pretty much my average, and that's pretty much where it sits. I don't have that in miles per gallon in my head, so I might just convert it and add it to the video here somewhere. Just write it down here. So consumption wise, it's not great. I mean, 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers. I bet that Golf in front of me is probably getting roughly the same kind of consumption. So this is just me touching the subject of my bike here a little bit. I might do a bit more in-depth review when I would actually make a list of things and not just try to do things off the top of my head. Until then, thanks for watching, and if you like this, just hit the little like button at the bottom there, or subscribe to my channel. So that's 850 Bimmer signing out for today. So have a nice day.